I might be obsessed with death. And it's not a bad thing. Actually, I think it's kind of a superpower. I come from Portugal, which means we are very much fearful of facing our own mortality. And so it's kind of a taboo thing, but I kind of like that I'm so comfortable with the idea of death. And I think that comes from my childhood. When I was 9 years old, my father was diagnosed with a cancer, a severe cancer. And I don't remember having a conversation specifically about cancer or death or whatever. But, well, I don't remember much of my childhood. But regardless, I knew somehow that those two things were together usually. Like, obviously, cancer is not necessarily a death sentence, but I knew that there was a probability for that to happen, right? And regardless, I knew that death was something that we would all sometime face in the future. Um, and so for me, was like growing up kind of with these uninvited, always present, invisible guest, right? And so I had always this idea that, well, I can lose my dad. Like, maybe today is the day I will lose my dad. I don't know. It was a thing that made me some company when I was growing up, right? So I was always thinking about this, like, okay, death is present. Death will come sooner or later to someone around me, right? So I always grew up with this very strange but somehow familiar now uh, feeling that, okay, death is part of us, it's part of our life, right? And in a sense, I think that death is what makes our life so valuable, right? Because if we would to be eternal, what would be the point, you know? I see death as that friend that lives overseas, and you only get to see them like once a year or something. And you have friends that live like 20 minutes from you, but you end up spending more time and more quality time with the friend from overseas than the friends that live nearby. And this happens because there is urgency. Whenever you are in their country or whenever they are in your country, you have a time limit to be together, to meet each other, to be present, to create these new memories, right? And so that urgency makes things happen, which probably doesn't happen with the other friends that lived so close, because with those friends it's like, oh, one day we will figure it out, one day we will meet, one day, tomorrow, the future, this kind of abstract thing that we've built to justify our lack of commitment sometimes, or prioritization, right? Because in the end it comes to priorities. Like, you have friends 20 minutes from you and you choose to meet those friends somewhere in the future, a future that we don't know if we will exist. Like, that's the truth, but I feel that most people have a hard time understanding this as it is. We all know that someday we will die, but we always see it in a very far, far away future. And sometimes it's not that far. But anyway, I think that my peaceful view of death, in kind of a way, like, I myself am not afraid of dying. I'm more like afraid of how I will die. I don't want to suffer. I think no one wants to suffer, but I know that my time will come. And, well, I just don't want to suffer. I'm not afraid that my time will come. And I think this friendship that I've built with this notion of death kind of kind of is what makes me such a good empathetic professional. And I think that comes from this notion that one day the people around us, they will cease to exist. If we are lucky enough, we will still be alive to miss them, right? And I'm saying lucky because, well, it won't be luck to lose people that we love, right? But if we see people around us departing, it's probably because we are still alive. And I think of myself like with 80 years old, for example, and having no memories, or, our memories cannot hold everything that we live. And so sometimes I stare at my boyfriend and he's like cooking as dinner, for example. And he's cooking, and the kitchen is a mess. And for me, that's very problematic because I'm very organized. And so I have two options. I can see it as an almost World War III scenario and be very anxious and like worried about it and overwhelmed and, oh gosh, why is he that way? Or I can remember myself that, well, he's alive, is cooking me dinner, and probably if he dies before I do, I will probably miss this chaos, right? Because it's proof that he's still here. And I think that, death is so amazing in this way because it makes the ordinary feel extraordinary, actually. And I think that's why I'm torn towards photography, because those are snippets of life, and it doesn't need to be like these super luxurious and whoa, we are traveling the world and, in a yacht and or something. It really comes down to these ordinary, simple things in life that builds the connection and builds our humanity. So for me, it's way more valuable for me to have like this vision and this picture of my boyfriend cooking a dinner in this apocalyptic scenario than like a picture of us in some luxurious hotel room, because that's not who we are. That was something that we did, right? Like, well, maybe we went on these fancy holidays once in our lifetime, whatever. But it's way more valuable for me to have these snippets of our ordinary life, which is, you know, our life. Our life is built day after day after day after day. And our days are built ordinary thing after ordinary thing after ordinary thing. There is a cumulative effect, right? And so I'm kind of glad that I grew up with this closeness and familiarity with the notion of death, because otherwise I would probably just be fearful of it and anxious about it and ignoring it and just living thinking that, oh, I have all time of the world, and probably screaming at my boyfriend every time he would cook us dinner because what the hell, I want my kitchen clean, why do you make such a mess? And I'm not saying that sometimes I don't do that, but most of the times I kind of remind myself that, well, this is exactly the kind of thing that I will miss if I outlive my partner, right? And so I just cherish it instead. And I think that's kind of precious. And I like to think that I do the same for my clients, because somehow I'm encapsulating their humanity, their connection, their essence, their dynamic, their love, their story, their humanity and personalities into these frames that they can look backwards to, right? Like they can look at a photo and immerse themselves back into that moment of pure joy, you know? So, yeah, I think there is value in not being eternal, and there is value in seeing death as a loss, yes, obviously, and a painful one, but also as bliss, because it makes us value what is most valuable in our lives, and it can shows us clearly what those things that those persons and those moments are. So I don't know, was this too morbid of a talk? Hopefully not. See you next time.